So, how are you feeling about technology's education after all the work you had to do last week?
A bit of work.
Pardon?
Not going to lie, it's a bit of work.
There was a little bit of work, yes. Remember though, it does count for your assessment. So it does mean you don't have to do a major assignment. So there was a bit of a balance there. Okay, so last week we learnt about the curriculum, so what the actual authorities say has to be covered in the technologies learning area. And this week we're learning about the content. What are the actual nitty-gritty bits and pieces that we actually have to teach? And we now start breaking things into our two subjects, digital technologies and design and technology. Hopefully you would have seen there's a fair bit of crossover, particularly in the processes and production skills, where we go through a similar design process, but each subject has different outcomes that they want from students. Design and technology, much more about our attitudes to food and fibre production and to being good consumers and producers, and creating solutions using various tools and techniques that students practice. Now in the primary years they're not too complex tools and processes. In the upper years they start using metalworking tools and 3D printers and a lot of other stuff like that that gets more involved. That said, there are still plenty of primary schools that are using 3D printers. In fact, probably not the majority of schools at the moment, but a lot of primary schools have now got 3D printers, and lots of them are getting robotic kits and electronic kits. So there's lots of this technology coming down into the primary school. In the past, primary schools often used to have to borrow equipment off the high schools. That was much easier if you were in a K-12 school, like many private schools, but it was much more difficult for state schools. That's where a lot of the feeder schools would often, that feed into a particular high school, would go on special design and technology days to the high school and use their equipment, like they also did with science, and go and use the science laboratories in the high school. But more and more now, that equipment and resources are coming into the primary schools. Certainly not the majority yet, but it's happening. So hopefully you've all produced some lesson plans. Now the intent of this section is for you to share those lesson plans. So we're going to form little groups of about 5 or 6 people. So we'll probably form 3 groups. And you're going to share those lesson plans with each other. And then you're going to provide each other with feedback. Now you've only got about 2 minutes to share your lesson plans. So about, well, maybe 1.5 minutes for each lesson plan. So just go through them briefly. Don't worry about the codes and stuff like that that you're going to use for Sim School. Just share the basic ideas and the structure of how you've thought about doing your lessons. And do that for design technology and digital technologies. And then receive the feedback from your peers. And write those down, because you need to actually have a record of that. Okay? You need to have a record of the feedback you receive and the feedback you give to others. You spend about 2 minutes or so on feedback for each person, so about 5 minutes per person.
How do you want that structured to be submitted?
In terms of your lesson plan, or in terms of the
feedback.
Okay, I've just got a form where it's got feedback you've received from each of the people in your group. So you've got 5 sort of areas you can fill in, and then 5 or so areas where you've given feedback.
Okay.
You don't need to fill them all in. Remember, this is not for marks. This is for marks. It's not marked against criteria. The whole point of these activities is to help you learn, okay, and to receive that feedback. So I'm not worried about the quality. Obviously, the better the quality, the better you're going to learn. But I will check just to see whether or not you haven't just put in rubbish. But I won't be going through and saying, no, that's not good enough. So just don't worry about that aspect of it, but you do have to do it to get the marks. So in terms of recording it, if you could just do 1 or 2 lines of feedback you've received from each person, and 1 or 2 lines of feedback you've given to the people that you provide the feedback. And then there'll be forms for you to fill in and put those details in. Or you can attach a file and stuff like that. So any questions? Okay, so let's get the groups. Looks like we have a natural grouping here, maybe one there and one in the back area. So about 5 or 6 per group. and get started on your feedback and sharing your lessons. Can I just put this in between you guys?
What is that?
It's just a little camera.
Oh god.
It's not streaming live.
That's good to know. Thank you for asking.
finishing up my nose.
Yeah,
that angle is not great.
Yeah. Okay, so I chose follow, describe, and represent a sequence of steps and decisions or algorithms needed to solve simple problems for year 2. I literally just did hour of code like we did last week, the frozen one. I thought it was still relevant to that age group as well. To start off, it was more so like a teacher presentation, so like they could, like he wouldn't have done it for us, but he could just show them what to do, although the thing tells you to. And then for the students, they will view the video that comes up first once they click on the frozen thing. And then they would like define, I guess, and just have a chat with the person next to them about the components of like what they needed to do just from the video, so that you knew what was actually happening. And then they can create their sequence as a whole class with the teacher, so they guide the teacher, and then they just clarify like the sequences and components of it just through like the teacher asking them a couple of questions, so after they've made it, and then they go and practice doing it themselves, so they have a go at making it. I didn't really do like a test or anything for them to do it because I feel like it does it within it, like if they get it wrong they have to reset it and start again, so I didn't really do a test, but I just said if it was necessary, like the students could show the teacher what or how far they got and what they got wrong to have to fix up, if that helps. And to summarise the lesson, it was more so just the students telling the teacher what they found easy, what they found difficult, what they enjoyed, what they didn't know, and what they now can do by themselves. Yeah, and that's it. Okay, I'm just going to write feedback so you guys can tell me.
Word it so you can write it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it was good how you had like the teacher.
I like that the kids were guiding the teacher, like
Yeah.
in doing it.
Yeah. But the teacher was still like demonstrating.
So like enough scaffolding for
Yeah,
them to
yeah,
know, but
definitely.
not for them to be like, okay, the teacher's done it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Did you do a Sim school thing for it?
No, I wasn't sure if we had to actually make the sim school thing as well.
Yeah.
I don't think we were. I've just done the lesson plan. Yeah.
Are you
So you guys should write that down as what feedback you gave.
Yeah.
So I just literally wrote that you said it was good that students were guiding the teacher, and what you wrote, because you need to write your feedback down what you
Can we
gave.
write it for every single person though, or like
I think we only need to write.
2
like
maybe?
yeah,
I think you
example?
said 2. Yeah.
I feel like everything's so unorganized. I honestly just can't get my head
Yeah, I
around any
didn't
of
know
this.
what to do properly. 'Cause I think
Yeah, me
You ready for
no,
another
me
so I
either.
like.
Do you need another thing?
I like to
If you want to tell me.
I just liked how, like, when they watched the video, then the kids talked about it together.
Yeah.
Because I found, like, even when we did it,
Yeah.
I was like, I still don't know what we're doing.
Okay.
So I liked that.
Sure.
Do we have to add the person's name?
Yeah, what's your name?
Natalie. Natalie. Yeah.
Well, if you go, the easiest way of always to find them is if you go to the log of learning activities, and then scroll down, you've got all of your activities, and feedback, click on that. At the end there'll be all the forms for each group, under each of these ones.
Sorry, what did you say your name was?
Natalie.
Somewhere for us to write the feedback, and you just write it in the form.
You'll type them into the form eventually, but if you want to just write it on paper now, it's fine.
I'm a bit
How are you
lost.
going? I understand you'll be a bit lost.
Yeah.
As we work through, you'll see that each week we do 2 lesson plans.
Yeah.
we share those and give each other feedback, and then we simulate them using a computer simulation with a simulated class, and then I lead you through 2 lessons.
Okay, so will we go through that simulation today?
We will after you've shared and done your feedback.
Yeah.
So, what do you base your lessons on?
Sorry?
What are your lessons like?
Okay, well each week, eventually you're going to submit 4 lesson plans about digital technologies.
Yeah.
One on digital technologies and one on design technologies,
Yeah.
and 2 of it, of however you want. And each week we're doing 2 practice ones basically.
Yeah.
They still count for marks, but not like they will at the very end.
Yeah.
So by the end of the course, you'll have 20 lesson plans that you've done to select your 4 best for submission for your final assignment.
Okay.
That's the intent of doing all this. And the intent is that you're going to get much better with your lesson plans through this peer feedback process and the computer simulations. So I don't expect them to be fantastic lesson plans at the moment, but by the end of 10 weeks of this, your lesson plan should be very, very good. That's what we're aiming towards. But now we're just starting off.
So,
So if you could provide feedback on other people's lesson plans, which you've only done your own for the moment,
yeah.
but record that feedback, which you can then submit that and get marks for that section.
Okay. And then so for our lesson plan for next week, where does that come from? Do we have
What we learned today.
Yeah.
Yes. And you'll see that I give some suggested ideas for lesson plans.
Will you do that every week?
Yes. You don't have to follow those, but I know that some of you want suggestions, so I provide, like for this week I suggested doing a bebop lesson and a tower lesson.
Yeah, which
Similar
is
to
what we did last
in
week.
lecture.
Yeah, yeah.
So it'll be similar to things this week. But eventually you'll be coming up with your own ideas for lesson plans. Okay?
Yeah.
So start sharing. So who's going to go first?
Have
we
we
already
done one?
Oh, one. Have you given feedback?
Yes.
Wonderful, even better. Who's going to go next then?
Sure. Okay. I did the one on the tower building thing.
what's your name?
Katie.
Katie,
Katie,
is this, do we have to do like one of each? So the design and the digital?
Yeah. Yeah. I only did one this week.
Yes, okay.
You beat me, I didn't.
And I did it for, I think it was year 4. I did year 4 anyways. So basically I just did a bit of a teacher explanation of like what we're doing and the materials and just basic. And then gave the students an opportunity to talk about it and think about how they could do it and just start thinking, and then also develop a plan in groups as well. So then, yeah, I guess
Like brainstorming.
brainstorming and stepping out. Okay, we could do this and we could do this sort of thing, and making that plan.
Remember, you
and
should always be
then
trying to find a positive and
a drawing or
a
a
way of
graphic, some sort of
in your feedback.
demonstration of what they're going to do on the paper, and then group work activities, build it, and then at the end present it, and then do a bit of a compare and contrast thing between the different groups and what worked and what didn't work, and then sort of work out how we should do it better the next time.
Like a reflection as
Yeah,
well?
based on what the groups did and merging that together.
Would that just be like verbal, or would you get them to write it down so then you can like see?
I think the compare and contrast would be writing it down,
Yeah.
and then yeah.
Maybe you could do like a group like reflection, so they can all
Yeah.
contribute, and then after that they could do like the compare and contrast and write it down.
Oh,
It's that
yeah.
way they're not just
Yeah,
like
so that's individual.
sitting there with like blank looks on their faces. They've already got like something in their brain to
Yeah, yeah.
get them writing.
But yeah, I like that compare and contrast and
Yeah.
discussing about how
Yeah, just following on from you, I think it's a good way for other students to see how other people create it, like and how other people interpret one thing. So like we did last week, obviously everyone built a tower in a different way, and without people showing other people, you don't see that. Like you only see your view, I guess. And I think that's a really good way to do it.
I think it's important as well to have that reflection instead of having students opportunity to like feedback. Yeah. So that next time they do it, they do it.
Cool.
I separated students into groups and gave them like a poster, and then started with them like writing technology and their ideas of what they use, like what different types of technology they use in and out of the classroom, just to kind of get their brains thinking. And then just created a technology about what technology is used for and what do they do when they get a new technology. Because in my situation, they've never seen e-books before. And then have them, and then show a YouTube video to visually show them how like the beatbots are used. And then in their groups, they're going to create like literal steps. They're going to write it down and have their little maps, and they're going to choose objects from around the class to have as obstacles on their map, and then they have to create steps to get around from one spot to the end. And so I said that students are going to write their own individual steps because they're in groups of 4 or 5, and each student needs to trial their steps and then reflect within their groups of what worked well and what didn't, and to go back and alter their steps accordingly so that they can make sure they get to that end goal. And then I said that, so once they've altered their steps, if time allows, then they will go back and try their new sequence of steps, and then at the end of the class just ask students questions and create a facilitate a discussion for a reflection of what worked well, what didn't, and did they have to change any of their steps and why, and what did they learn about having to use new technology and how that affects how technology is used. Yeah, research.
I liked how after they did the first trial, where they had to go back and fix their steps if they needed to. So it's like giving them the opportunity to go back and try again, and actually, because sometimes we can do things like, oh, I got it wrong, oh well, but actually having to go back and figure it out.
I like how you've got them that they're writing their individual steps in like within their group, because like if I was in a group and I didn't know what to do, then I kind of let somebody else take over, but it makes sure that they get involved in it.
That each student is learning at the same time. Yeah, they're not just letting say like me do all the work or you do all the work while everyone else just sits there. Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
In your lesson, like, do you let the kids kind of manipulate them first, like just for a test run before they write out their sequence and stuff? Yeah, just thinking like you showed them the video, which was great, like because obviously they don't know, it's like an introduction, but I was just thinking back to my class when we were doing something like that. A lot of kids just want to touch it and they want to play around with it, and I think we even did it last week. We were just, because I'd never seen it before, I was like, I just want to play around with it before I have to think, okay, left to, up to, like that type of thing. Yeah, just to manipulate the people a little bit, and then have them realise that if we tell it to turn left, the whole B-bot turns